I held off on making this video because I wanted to first see how this story would unfold. A quick recap: two people in the Olympics in the women's boxing division, most notably Imane Khelif of Algeria, who has since gone on to win gold, have been the center of an XY chromosome controversy that has left many people asking, are they trans? Are they intersex? And is it fair? The issue has come up over and over again with trans women wanting to compete with biological women, such as swimmer Leah Thomas and UFC fighter Fallon Fox. I'm actually going to have a special guest on again today, who I've interviewed before, Jessica Gill. She's a pro athlete who is trans and fights for women's sports to stay women's sports only. You probably remember her from Jubilee. She's got her own channel as well out on YouTube and is also on Instagram and X. This is Voices with Vicky. I'm just an ordinary lesbian seeking extraordinary conversation, so let's go.
The IOC decided to put inclusivity over reality, or fairness, what we would like to call fairness in sport. They said we will go with the inclusivity factor over the fairness factor. So they allowed anybody who identified as a woman to enter whatever category they wished. So they totally didn't even consider a testing method or any sort of qualifiers, like you have to be XX or you have to be XY. They just said it's inclusive. Basically, the IOC for this scenario said we are not going with anything but gender identity. That's why they brought up the passport thing. That was so important to them. Well, their passport says female, so we have to identify that. So that would qualify for a trans person as well as someone who's intersex or has a DSD. So that's where the IOC came in and said, we're not going to follow. Now, World Aquatics just recently had their board meeting, and they said we will not put inclusivity over safety.
Right, which is why Leah Thomas was not in the 2024 Olympics, correct?
Correct, because the IOC, even though they're trying to be gender inclusive, they will not override their rules. They will follow the ruling of the world body, the governing body of whatever sport. So rugby came together and said no. I believe cycling came together and said no. Cycling, only UCI cycling eliminated the male inclusion from the elite category, but still lower category 4, 3, 2, and 1 are still allowed to be gender inclusive. So cycling's kind of halfway there. Swimming's full on no-go. Rugby and soccer, I believe. So those world governing organizations have made their decisions, and that's what the IOC follows. And since there is no thing on boxing, the IBA was the International Boxing Association was disbanded for a lot of conspiracy, saying, oh, it was Russia and they were crooked and that's why they lost their...
I heard that. Mm-hmm.
I don't buy it. Whatever. Who cares what caused them to go bankrupt or whatever? They weren't lying to eliminate Imane Khelif or the boxer Lin Yu-tung. So the IBA didn't have a say in the IOC's decision this year, and the IOC just went with, like said, inclusivity over safety. So that's the unfair part.
Yeah, so going back to that, so the IOC is going on, basically ideology or inclusivity or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
So in their minds, that's fair. And it doesn't matter. Bodies don't play sports. Identities play sports.
Yes.
Is that right?
According to the IOC, yes, that would be correct.
Okay. So
that would be their stance.
So they don't consider or ask themselves, like, how do we keep women's sports safe? If we don't, literally have, sex-based rules.
Exactly. Yeah. they're not concerned with that. Apparently, they're more concerned with being DEI, diversity and inclusion, and equity. So yeah, it's unfortunate, and it's why, as everybody who knows me knows, that I exist to this day, is to stop this madness. And it's an uphill battle for sure. We've it's gone like this. It was climbing. My battle was
Mhm.
winning, and it's kind of plateaued a little bit right now. Just I think because of the election coming up, and the whole world is on its ear about this whole thing. So
Yeah.
um,
And you know, it's funny. The thought has crossed my mind. Did they do this on purpose? Because like literally from like the opening day when they had that stupid thing with the Last Supper, and there was all that uproar about that. So it's kind of been this like super left, like woke thing from the start, and it makes me wonder: did they do this on purpose with this boxing thing? Did they push this so that more people would watch and it would get more ratings and get people in an uproar and get people crazy? Like, I mean, is it really that bad? Is our world that like disjointed at the moment that those are the drivers here?
yeah, I've had several discussions online with people about I I also I want to know why this sudden push, not sudden, but over the last 5 years, let's say, why this hard push to be so inclusive and cater to everyone's feelings. And I struggle to find an answer other than if the conspiracy theorist inside me comes out and says, well, it's the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the WEF behind the curtain pulling the strings, and they have publicly said they want less people on the planet. They're worried about the planet because we're overpopulating it. And so they have, without remorse, stated clearly that we have too many people on the planet. We need to fix this problem. And a way to do that, and it can happen pretty quickly, if you were to sterilize an entire generation, like, population would be cut in, I don't want to say half, but it would be chopped off immensely in a matter of less than 10 years. You would have way less population. So if that's a really big conspiracy, but is this the path that they would choose? Like, let's make everybody gay and trans, and then everybody starts taking these weird drugs and nobody procreates, and population problem solved. Like, so that's one theory that I have.
Mhm.
I'm sure other people share that sentiment with me, but I don't know what the driving force is behind. Like, it's literally just people's feelings. Like, that's
Yeah.
it. Like, I feel like a woman, so I need to play in women's sports. Like, that's one side of it, but
Yep.
they want everybody who feels like a woman to be able to run for Congress and be the president, or have all these positions of power to
Uh-huh.
show the rest of the world that they're inclusive. But who are they showing to? Like, who's
Well,
behind the curve? What's the end game? That's what I want to know. What's the end game?
well, and you know, I think a lot about my late grandmothers. You know, they were both born at the beginning of the 20th century, and
Hmm.
they were both very progressive women for that time period. My one grandmother went to Columbia University, and you know, that was unheard of to go to college, you know, back in
Yeah.
those days for women to go to college. And my other grandmother had just a high school education and spent 30 years, you know, running her own small business by herself. And I often think about that stuff. I think about them and I think about what would they say about all of this now? What would they be thinking? And they were considered progressive, and now, you know, fast forward all these years later, we're still asking ourselves, what is a woman?
Well, this is one of the problems with this left-wing gender ideology, is that no one who espouses it can even tell you what these words mean. Like, what is a woman?
Well,
Can you tell me what a woman is?
no, I can't, because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what does a female mean?
Well,
How do
that's
you define a female?
someone with female reproductive organs.
Okay.
Someone who's, here's the thing: when you're female, it goes right down to your bones, your DNA. So that's why if someone dies,
Okay.
we could dig up their bones 100 years from now. We have no idea what they believed in their head, but we can tell what sex they were because it's ingrained in every fiber of their being.
We've regressed. This is a regression. The progressive part ended somewhere over there. I don't know, but it's certainly not progress. And that's the thing. They keep using that word progressive, and that is just a nice cushy word to use. It's really the opposite. It's regression. And again, what's the driving force? What's the long game? What's the end goal? That's the big question of the hour, I think.
My problem with the whole thing is the lack of transparency. Now, there is a line we can't cross with civil human rights. Like, I can't just say you need to, like, back in the 1960s when they started the Olympics, they literally lined the athletes up naked and did a sex test that way. That's how they did it. They had naked athletes would walk into the room. The officials, okay, check, 70 something. They started the blood test to see XY, and then it all just went away. They just said this is a violation of my human rights. But with Khelif, like, if you were going to come to the world stage and say, I am a woman, you know in your mind that, see, that's the thing. We don't know. We don't know what he's thinking. Like, is he purposefully cheating? Does he actually believe in his mind, in his body, in his heart, his soul? He believes he is a woman because he was born without external male genitalia? And that just answered all of his questions right there. He's like, I'm a girl. That's all there is to it. But did they look into it and see that he really did have internal male testes? And we know he does because he failed the XX test from 2022 and 2023. We know he has the Y chromosome. So he has gonads in his body. Whether they're descended or not, I don't know that.
And does it matter? Because
it doesn't matter.
Because there's a hormonal, and it's more than a hormonal imbalance. I mean, that descriptor is incorrect, right?
So that's an incorrect descriptor. There's three issues with this. There's the Swyer syndrome, which Swyer syndrome is an actual biological female. It would have XX chromosomes, or I think XY chromosomes, but it would be a biological female. It would have biological female organs. And Swyer syndrome means that you don't have this gene in there's a switch in your body that says, make testosterone and use it. And the Swyer syndrome is such a rare instance that very few people have it. There's no way in the world 3 athletes in the same Olympic competition would be a Swyer syndrome. But then we have the CAIS, the androgen insensitivity syndrome. That's what we're dealing with these 2 boxers specifically. But the problem is we can't prove it because it's illegal to just ask them. So with everybody consciously or subconsciously hiding the truth, how do we know? We can't know this, what his insensitivity level is. Complete androgen, which the word andro is male, and gen for generation. So male generating testosterone. That's what androgen means. Insensitivity is how your cells, your muscle cells, are they insensitive to testosterone or are they accepting? So you either have bound testosterone, which binds itself to your muscles and you grow with that, or you have free testosterone, which is unbound. And so if you have complete insensitivity to testosterone, you will not benefit from testosterone as you go through puberty. You will not benefit at all. And if you have a partial, there's 4. There's complete, partial, and 2 others that are like full on, whatever, it's complete, where you accept, your body accepts it 100%. That's me. That's a guy with XY and straight up man. So the partial and the complete, that's what we're curious about with Khelif, is does he have partial or the other one, which there's no way he has complete insensitivity. Look at his shoulders. Look at his jawline. Look at his kneecaps. Right. So people ask me all the time, how do you clock a trans woman? I'm like, it's easy. Hands, Elbows. Elbows are a real telltale sign for me because I've been doing this all my life.
It kind of brings me to something interesting that I found, and you probably already heard about it. Khelif has a new look.
Oh, he's a girl. The international women's icons for women, they're always talking about how as a safety mechanism built into women, you ladies can ID a man in a New York second, so in a millisecond. So he has a little bit of femininity and maybe his nose, I don't know, but it's, I don't know. He looks like a guy to me. But why would there be, why would his family go through all this trouble and label him as a girl? Because he probably was born with just a sexual developmental disorder where there were no external organs to
Which they
verify.
probably they very well may have not even known about it until later on.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I was in a debate on X this morning with. I had posted a while ago a picture of his birth certificate that his family had showed. It was floating around online, and it was updated in 2018, moved to female, and stamped with the government stamp on it.
For me, the bottom line is what's safe and what's fair for women, and period. You know, and I don't understand why so many people have to complicate it so much further by taking this one person and saying, you're discriminating, you're being hateful. And it's like, no, again, this isn't about hate. This isn't about discrimination. This is about fairness and safety for 99% of the other women out there competing in various professional sports. Why is it that this is only ever an issue with trans women and women's sports, but it never comes up with men? I mean, I think we all know the answer to that question, to be honest, because men aren't threatened by this, whereas this is a threat to women. That's why you've always been such an advocate for not doing this. And here you are, a trans woman too. And I'm sure people's minds are blown by that because they expect you to fall in line with everybody else and you don't. And that is very telling right there in a positive light that perhaps the tide might turn.
The fact that they think they deserve these opportunities is what drives me crazy because look, life's not fair. Life is hard. In the words of the great Candace Owens, right? Life's tough, get a helmet. You know? So,
life's tough, get a helmet.
I all my life growing up, I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. Like that was what I wanted to be in the Air Force. I wanted to fly a fighter jet and all that stuff. I was born legally, clinically deaf in my right ear. Like I had zero hearing. It never worked. It's a deformed ear. Like it doesn't look deformed. It's the same. It's not the same size. It's actually smaller. But the inner ear never developed. It's a birth defect, right? I was born deaf in one ear. I was then eliminated my chances to be an Air Force pilot. You have to be able to hear out of both ears to be a pilot. Like you have to be great physical condition, right? Other than that, I could have made it. Like I'm physically capable, but because of my birth defect, it disqualifies me. Well, the same goes for Imane Khelif. You were born a certain way, but that's not everybody else's problem, right? That's a you problem to deal with. Okay. And does it suck? Yes, it sucks. 100%. It's bullshit. Bummed me out. Like I went through junior ROTC all the way through, junior high school, even into high school. I tried to join the ROTC, and that's when they told me, they didn't tell me till I got into high school. Oh, you're deaf in one ear. You can't be in the military. I'm like, oh. Well, I spent 5-6 years, working at this, studying, reading airplanes, doing all these models, like working with, I did staying after school, extracurricular activities. The same thing with Imane. He did all this boxing work. That's his sport. That's his hobby. That might be the love of your life and that might be what drives you, but you have to leave it as just a sport or a hobby. You can't pursue it because of the way you were born. You can't let that override other people's safety, right? And so I relate that to me when I'm like, okay, I wanted to be a pilot, but I couldn't because of the way I was born. Like, just because you were born a certain way doesn't mean you get to trample over women, punch them in the head. Like, what?
Right.
So that's what I wanted to bring up is the narcissism selfishness. Like, how entitled do you have to be to think that because you were born a certain way, you deserve, something that somebody else doesn't? I wouldn't have a social media platform if it wasn't for this issue. I was just on another show, Buck Angel, and I had said something like that, like, social media is a real drag on my brain, and this whole push for inclusivity over safety seems to be driven behind social media. I mean, maybe not social media driving it, but social media fuels the flames, right? How ignorant do we have to be as a society that says women don't matter? Why is that a thing? Like, that shouldn't be a thing at all. Women need the equal playing field. Yes.
That there's a reason that there's a separation of men and women in certain areas of life, right? There's a reason that there's women's sports and there's men's sports. There's a reason that there's men's prisons and women's prisons. And to blur those lines all of a sudden and expect everybody to comply with that is very suspicious. It's just very strange that has been allowed. And now all of a sudden, all the rules of anatomy, all the rules of biology, everything we've known since the beginning of time, pretty much, is gone out the window in exchange for being inclusive of anybody, no matter what they say they are, if they are that thing or not. And how dare you question it? And I really think it was sort of the end of the LGBT rights movement, when we got the marriage equality rights and all that they've really revved this stuff up and really got it going more and more, because we solved all our other problems. Our workplace rights were solved, same-sex marriage was solved, adoption rights were solved, healthcare issues were solved. We did all the things that we came here to do. And then they decided, you know what, let's keep lobbying because we can and because we say so. And, let's also tack on QIA plus who's a what's it, caca to it, and invite more and more and more othered things into the community. And before you know it, you don't even know which way is up. I'm seeing it on the left and I'm seeing it on the right. I'm seeing it everywhere. And nobody really understands what's going on. And I'm sitting here like, time out. Like, this is really out of control. We're going to lose everything if we keep this up. That's my theory, is that it's going to give like the far right, like the really, really conservative religious people, an excuse to literally be like, we're going to pull everything because you're all crazy, And I don't know if that's really very realistic, but that crosses my mind because it appears and looks that out of control. And I've actually said to myself a few times, if it was let's protect women and let's protect children and we can accomplish that, do I care? Like, but then I'm like, we're all going to have to throw ourselves on the chopping block to solve this when it's a pretty easy solve. You just make the regulations and make trans a category and just stop with the nonsense. But we can't seem to, people are so scared to speak up and say things like that because they believe that they've convinced themselves that it's hateful to do so. And so because they've convinced themselves, now they're out there trying to convince everybody else of the same thing and censor everybody's speech. And now fast forward, here we are talking about this sports thing. And I just never would have imagined that this is what I would be out here pioneering for now. If you had told me that 15 years ago, I would have been like, what are you talking about? I'm almost on the other side of it. We're almost at a point where so the left side is saying, you're going to get all your rights taken away. And I'm voting to keep my rights. And what the counterpoint now is, well, you're also voting against fairness and safety for women and children. That's what you're doing. You're voting against that now. And you don't realize that that's what you're voting for by continuing this push of supposed progression. And nobody seems to know what's going on. So for me, I wish we could have all just said, time out. Like, let's just be honest here about what's happening and get to the bottom of it, instead of using politics as a driver to make decisions about what should and shouldn't be happening. Again, this is a rare condition if this person is intersex. You know, and again, I know that people have a lot of thoughts and feelings about it. Tell me what you think in the comments about all of this. You know, I feel bad for this person in some respects because maybe they truly are intersex and they were raised female and they don't see themselves any different than anyone else. But I also have a lot of concerns about that condition and how that can serve as a advantage over biological women. So tell me what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching Voices with Vikki. See you next time.